Margaret Thornton's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she dialed 911. 97 motorcycles had just surrounded her farmhouse. Hell's Angels. The real ones. She was 73 years old, alone, and the foreclosure notice on her table said she had 30 days to live here. Now she might not survive 30 minutes. The lead biker killed his engine, removed his helmet, walked toward her porch with tears streaming down his weathered face. "Mama M," he whispered, "I promised I'd come back." Margaret dropped the phone. She knew those eyes. She'd fed those eyes soup 21 years ago. Lucas? My Lucas is alive? Subscribe now and follow this incredible story to the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this journey travels. The kitchen still smelled like coffee. 3 cups because Margaret always made 3. One for herself, one for Robert, even though he'd been dead 8 years. One for David, even though her son never came home from Afghanistan. Habits die hard when you're 73 and alone. Margaret stood frozen at her window, the shotgun at her feet, watching 97 motorcycles arrange themselves in perfect formation across her property. Black leather everywhere, chrome catching the weak November sun, exhaust smoke rising like ghosts. She should be terrified. She was. But that voice, that word, Mama M, only one person in the world had ever called her that. The man with the silver beard walked toward her porch. His boots were heavy on the frozen ground. Behind him, 96 bikers killed their engines one by one. The sudden silence was almost worse than the thunder. Margaret's hand found the doorknob. Her fingers wouldn't work right. Arthritis, fear, something else entirely. She opened the door. The man stopped at the bottom of her porch steps. Up close, she could see the patches on his vest. Hell's Angels, President, Iowa. His face was weathered, lined, aged by decades she knew nothing about. But his eyes, God help her, she knew those eyes. "You got old," she whispered. Stone laughed. It was wet, broken, not a laugh at all. "You got gray." "I was gray when you met me." "No, ma'am, you had brown in it still. I remember." Margaret's knees buckled. She grabbed the porch railing. 21 years, Lucas. 21 years I didn't know if you were alive or dead. I called everyone, police, social services, private investigators. Nothing. You just vanished. I know. I thought Carl killed you. Stone's jaw tightened at his stepfather's name. He tried. "Then where?" Margaret's voice cracked. "Where have you been?" Stone climbed the steps slowly. He moved like a man approaching something sacred. When he reached her, he towered over her small frame. His massive hands, scarred and calloused, reached out and took her weathered fingers. "I've been becoming someone worthy of coming back." Behind them, the bikers began dismounting. Margaret watched them through tear-blurred vision. Men in their 30s, 40s, 50s. Some with gray beards like Stone, some younger, harder, all of them moving with purpose. "Lucas," she still couldn't process it. "Why are there 97 of you?" Stone smiled. It transformed his face, made him look almost like the scared boy she'd found in her shed 2 decades ago. "Because you're about to lose your house, Mama M, and my family doesn't let that happen." Margaret pulled her hands back like she'd been burned. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything." "No one knows. I haven't told anyone." Stone reached into his vest and pulled out a folded paper. Margaret recognized it immediately. The foreclosure notice. The one sitting on her kitchen table. Her blood went cold. "You broke into my house?" "I had someone check on you 6 months ago. They found this in your mailbox." "You've been watching me? For 6 months? For 21 years. Margaret stepped back. Her shoulder hit the doorframe. The world was tilting, rearranging itself into shapes she didn't recognize. "That's not possible." "The money that paid off David's funeral, that was me. That was anonymous. The funeral home said, me. The new furnace that showed up after Robert's heart attack, the company said it was a warranty replacement that didn't exist. Me. The property taxes that got paid 3 years ago when I missed the deadline. Mama M. Stone's voice broke. I never forgot. Not for one single day. You saved my life. You think I wouldn't spend the rest of it trying to repay you? Margaret's legs gave out. Stone caught her before she hit the ground. He carried her inside like she weighed nothing. 96 bikers watched in silence as their president disappeared into the small, blue farmhouse with the old woman in his arms. Inside, Stone set her gently on the couch. The same couch, Margaret realized, the same ugly floral pattern. 21 years and she'd never replaced it. I made soup for you on this couch, she whispered. Chicken noodle, Campbell's. You added extra crackers because I looked hungry. You were starving. I was dead. Stone knelt beside her. I just didn't know it yet. I was 15 years old, hadn't eaten in 4 days, and I was already planning how I was going to let myself freeze to death in your shed. Then you opened that door. Margaret remembered. God, she remembered everything. November 2003, first snow of the season. She'd gone to the shed for firewood and found a skeleton with blue eyes huddled in the corner. Blonde hair matted with dirt, bruises covering his arms, ribs visible through his torn shirt. She should have called the police. Instead, she'd held out her hand. Come inside, child. No one's going to hurt you here. Why didn't you ever tell me you were watching? Margaret asked. Why didn't you come back? Stone stood and walked to the window. Outside, the bikers had started unloading equipment from their motorcycles. Tools, lumber, things Margaret couldn't identify. Because I was ashamed. Of what? Of what I became after Carl took me back. Margaret closed her eyes. She didn't want to hear this. She'd spent 21 years imagining it, and every scenario was a nightmare. Tell me anyway. Stone didn't turn around. He beat me half to death the night he got me back. Broke 3 ribs in my left arm. Told me if I ever ran again, he'd kill you and Robert first. Oh, Lucas. So I stayed. 2 more years. Let him use me as a punching bag because I couldn't stand the thought of him hurting you. Margaret pressed her hand to her mouth. When I was 17, he came home drunk and went too far. Put me in a coma for 2 weeks. When I woke up, he was in prison and I was in foster care. But I was too old, too angry, too broken. I aged out at 18 with nothing. Ended up on the streets in Chicago. How did you survive? Stone finally turned. His eyes were dry now, but empty in a way that hurt Margaret's heart. I didn't. Not for a long time. The front door opened. A massive biker with a beard down to his chest stepped inside. His vest said, Bear. Sorry to interrupt, Stone, but the boys are asking where to start. Stone wiped his face with the back of his hand. Roof first, then the foundation on the east side. Margaret, this is Bear. He's the one who found me. Bear nodded at her. Ma'am, it's an honor. Found you? Margaret looked between them. On a bridge in Chicago, Bear said simply. 20 feet from jumping. Worst night of his life. Best decision I ever made, stopping my bike. Margaret's chest tightened. You saved him. No, ma'am, I just talked to him. Told him about a woman who fed hungry people at our clubhouse every Sunday. Told him family doesn't have to be blood. Told him whatever he was running from, he could outrun it with us. The woman at the clubhouse, Stone said, she reminded me of you. Same kind of patient, same kind of stubborn. I stayed because of her, but I got clean because of you. I don't understand. Stone pulled a coin from his pocket, handed it to her. Bronze, worn smooth from handling. 15 years sober. Every day I wanted to use, I thought about you standing in that shed door. I thought about how you looked at me like I was worth something. I couldn't throw away the life you gave me. Margaret turned the coin over in her fingers. 15 years. Her Lucas had been sober for 15 years. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. Something cracked in Stone's face. For just a moment, he wasn't a Hells Angels president. He was a 15-year-old boy, starving and scared, desperate for someone to see him. I needed to hear that. I mean it. I know. That's why it matters. Outside, the sounds of work began. Hammers, drills, shouted instructions. Margaret glanced at the window. Lucas, I can't let you do this. It's already done. The bank wants $127,000. Your friends can't possibly— My brothers, Stone corrected. And they can. They will. You're not losing this house, Mama M. Not while I'm breathing. But why? I fed you soup. I let you stay for a few months. That doesn't deserve— 8 months. Stone's voice hardened. 8 months of being human. 8 months of sleeping without fear. 8 months of learning to read, of eating 3 meals a day, of having someone care whether I lived or died. You didn't just feed me soup, Margaret. You fed me hope. And hope is the only reason I'm still alive. Margaret started crying. She couldn't help it. 21 years of grief and wonder and fear poured out of her in ugly, gasping sobs. Stone sat beside her. He didn't try to stop her tears. He just waited. I looked for you everywhere, she finally managed. I know. I called Carl. He laughed at me. Said you ran away again, probably dead in a ditch somewhere. Stone's hand curled into a fist. He's dead now. 3 years ago. Liver failure. I went to his funeral. Why? To make sure he was actually in the ground. The hours passed strangely. Margaret sat on her couch while 96 bikers transformed her property. She could hear them everywhere, on the roof, in the basement, around the foundation. Stone sat with her, answering 21 years of questions. He told her about the streets, about the drugs, about the night on the bridge when Bear found him. He told her about the Hells Angels, about the family he'd found, about working his way up from prospect to full member to sergeant-at-arms to president. He told her about the woman who served food at the clubhouse, how she died of cancer 5 years ago, how he'd held her hand at the end. She knew about you, Stone said. I told her everything. She said I needed to stop watching from a distance and come see you in person. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid. Of what? Stone looked at her with those blue eyes, the same ones she'd seen in her shed door 21 years ago. That you'd forgotten me. Margaret reached over and took his hand, squeezed hard. I made 3 cups of coffee this morning. 1 for me, 1 for Robert, 1 for you. I've been making 3 cups for 21 years, Lucas. I never forgot. Not once. Bear came back inside at noon. Stone, we got a problem. Both Stone and Margaret looked up. The foundation's worse than we thought. We're going to need concrete. A lot of it. Stone stood. How much? 20, 30 grand worth, plus labor. Margaret's heart sank. That's too much. You can't. Stone ignored her. Call Hammer in Des Moines. Tell him I need every prospect in his chapter here by tomorrow, with trucks. That's another 40 men. I don't care if it's 400. Get it done. Bear nodded and left. Margaret stared at Stone. You can't just call in 40 more people. I can call in 400 more if I need to. Mama M, you don't understand what you did for me. I made soup. You made me believe I deserved to live. The words hung in the air between them. Lucas, let me tell you something. Stone sat back down, facing her directly. When I was on that bridge, I'd already made peace with dying. I had nothing, no one. Carl's voice was the only thing in my head, telling me I was worthless, telling me the world would be better off without me. And you know what stopped me? Margaret shook her head. Your voice. You said something to me on the last night before Carl took me back. Do you remember? Margaret tried to think. 21 years was a long time. You said, Lucas, no matter what happens, no matter where you go, remember that someone in Iowa thinks you're worth fighting for. And when I was standing on that bridge, about to jump, I heard your voice saying those words. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't die without at least trying to become the person you thought I could be. Margaret broke down again. Stone let her cry. By evening, the roof was patched. The kitchen window that had been stuck for 3 years opened smoothly, and the furnace that had been making strange noises ran silent. But it was what happened at dinner that broke Margaret completely. Stone brought her to the backyard. Somehow in the chaos, the bikers had set up tables and chairs. A barbecue the size of a small car sent smoke into the darkening sky, and all 96 men sat waiting. "What is this?" Margaret asked. "Family dinner." Stone guided her to the head table. "Something we do at the clubhouse. We call it table. Everyone eats together, shares stories, remembers why we ride together." "I can't possibly." "Sit." Margaret sat. One by one, bikers came to her table. They introduced themselves. They shook her hand, and they told her stories. "My name's Wrench. Stone found me sleeping under an overpass when I was 19. I'm 34 now, got a wife and 2 kids. "I'm Diesel. I was running from a drug dealer when Stone gave me work at the shop. 10 years clean last month. They call me Ghost. I aged out of foster care with nothing. Stone gave me a place to stay, taught me mechanics, gave me purpose. Story after story after story. Broken young men who'd been put back together, all of them crediting Stone, all of them saying the same thing. He told us about you. He told us what you did for him. You're the reason any of us are here." After dinner, Stone found Margaret sitting alone in her kitchen, staring at nothing. "You okay?" "How many?" she asked. "How many what?" "Those boys, the ones who told me stories. How many have you helped?" Stone was quiet for a moment. 847. Margaret's breath stopped. "Over the past 15 years, kids nobody wants, kids who remind me of me. We find them, we feed them, we give them work, purpose, family. Lucas, we call the program Mama M's Table because that's where it started. At your kitchen table with a bowl of soup and a woman who saw a human being instead of a runaway." Margaret put her face in her hands. "I named it after you," Stone continued. "Every kid who comes through, they learn your story first. They learn that one small act of kindness can save a life, and then they go out and save others. I didn't know. How could you? I never told you." "Why not?" Stone sat across from her. In the dim kitchen light, he looked old and young at the same time. The boy she'd saved and the man he'd become. "Because I wasn't finished yet. I needed to become someone worth showing you. I needed to make you proud before I could face you. Lucas, I was always proud of you. From the moment you picked up a book and tried to read, even though you could barely make out the words. From the moment you helped Robert fix the tractor, even though you'd never held a wrench. I didn't need you to save 800 kids to be proud of you." Stone's eyes glistened. "I needed to save them for me." The house was quiet now. Most of the bikers had gone to the motel in town, but a few stayed, sleeping on the porch, in the barn, in their sleeping bags on the grass, protecting the house, protecting Margaret. Stone sat on the couch looking at old photos, Margaret beside him, pointing out faces. "That's Robert on our wedding day. Wasn't he handsome? He scared the hell out of me when I first showed up. He was scared of you too, thought you might rob us." I thought about it for about 5 seconds. Then I was too hungry to think about anything but food. Margaret turned the page. "That's David, his high school graduation." Stone studied the photo. "He looks kind of like me." "I thought that too. Same hair, same eyes. Sometimes I wondered." She trailed off. "Wondered what?" "If God sent you to me because he knew I was going to lose my son. Like a preview of grief, but also a preview of hope." Stone set the album down gently. "I'm not David. I know. I can't replace him. I'm not asking you to. Then what do you want from me, Mama M?" Margaret reached over and touched his face. Rough stubble, weather-beaten skin, but underneath, the same boy who'd cried when she gave him seconds at dinner because no one had ever offered him more. "I want you to come back for Thanksgiving." Stone blinked. "What?" "And Christmas, and Easter, And random Tuesdays when you have nothing better to do. I want you to stop watching me from a distance and start being my family. I lost my husband. I lost my son. I've been alone for 8 years, Lucas. I don't want to be alone anymore. Stone didn't answer right away. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at his brothers sleeping under the stars. I'm president of a motorcycle club. I've done things that would horrify you. I'm not the innocent kid you remember. I never thought you were innocent. I thought you were hungry and hurt and worth saving anyway. Margaret, don't. She stood too, surprisingly strong. Don't you dare push me away after 21 years. I didn't spend 2 decades wondering if you were alive just to have you show up, fix my house, and disappear again. That's not how family works. Stone turned. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. 73-year-old widow, 36-year-old biker, worlds apart in every way that was supposed to matter. But some bonds don't care about logic. Thanksgiving's in 3 weeks, Stone finally said. I know. I could bring some of the younger guys, the ones who don't have anywhere else to go. Margaret smiled. It was the first real smile Stone had seen on her face all day. I'll need to buy a bigger turkey. The night stretched on. Margaret should have been exhausted, but she couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop looking at Lucas. Couldn't stop touching his hand to make sure he was real. Tell me about the bridge, she finally said. Stone stiffened. You don't want to hear that story. Yes, I do. It's dark. So was finding you in my shed. Tell me anyway. Stone leaned back into the couch. His eyes went somewhere far away. I was 21, 4 years on the streets, 3 overdoses, 2 robbery attempts, 1 stabbing that almost killed me. I hadn't been sober in months. Couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten something that wasn't from a trash can. Margaret's hand found his. I walked onto that bridge at 3 in the morning, middle of winter, cold enough that I figured hypothermia would get me before I hit the water. I stood on the railing for, he paused. I don't know, minutes, hours, time didn't mean anything. What were you thinking about? Carl, mostly. His voice in my head, telling me I was nothing, telling me I should have died years ago, telling me the world would be better off. Stone's jaw tightened. And then I thought about you. Me? You, standing in that shed door. You, handing me soup. You, sitting with me while I cried about my mom. You, telling Robert to give me a chance even when he didn't want to. You, hugging me goodbye when Carl dragged me away. Margaret squeezed his hand. And I thought, if I jump, then Carl wins. He gets to be right. He gets to have killed me, just slowly instead of quickly. And I didn't want him to win. So you climbed down? Stone shook his head. No, I was still going to jump. But then Bear pulled up on his bike. What did he say? He asked if I needed a ride. Margaret almost laughed. That's it? That's it. Not, don't jump. Not, think about your family. Just, you need a ride, kid? And you said, I said I didn't have anywhere to go. He said that was okay. He knew a place. I said I was going to jump. He said that was okay too, but could I maybe do it after he bought me breakfast, because he didn't like eating alone? Margaret shook her head in wonder. He didn't try to save me, Stone continued. He just stood with me, sat on the railing next to me, told me about his life. Vietnam vet, 3 ex-wives, lost custody of his kids. Told me about the club, about how they were all broken people who found each other. Asked me why I was up there. What did you tell him? Everything. Carl, my mom, you, the streets, all of it. And when I was done, he said, sounds like you've got one person who loves you and one person who wants you dead. Why are you letting the dead voice win? And that saved you? Stone was quiet for a long moment. What saved me was realizing I had a choice. Not about whether to live or die. I was too broken to make that choice clearly. But about whose voice I was going to listen to. And I decided, just for one night, to listen to yours instead of his. Margaret didn't realize she was crying until Stone handed her a tissue. Sorry, she said. I keep crying. I hate crying. You cried when I left too. I cried for months after you left. I know. Bear tracked down Carl once, found out where he'd taken me, said you'd called 23 times asking about me. 27. Bear said 23. Bear miscounted. Stone laughed. It was wet and broken, but real. 27 phone calls, he said. For a kid you'd known 8 months. For my kid. Margaret looked him dead in the eyes. You were mine, Lucas. The moment I opened that shed door, you became mine. Not legally, not on paper, but in here. She pressed her hand to her heart. Mothers don't stop looking for their children, ever. Stone's composure cracked. For just a moment, he wasn't a 40-something biker president. He was a 15-year-old boy, crying in a kitchen, eating soup like it might be his last meal. I thought you forgot about me. Never. I thought you moved on. Impossible. I thought maybe, eventually, I was just some kid you fed once. Margaret reached up and took his face in her hands, made him look at her. Lucas James Brennan, you were never just some kid. You were the son I got to keep for 8 months before the world stole you from me. And I have spent every day since waiting for you to come back. Every single day. Stone broke. The president of the Hells Angels, the man who commanded respect from hundreds of hardened bikers, collapsed into Margaret's arms and sobbed like the child he'd never been allowed to be. She held him, just like she'd held him 21 years ago. Some things never change. It was past midnight when they finally separated. Stone wiped his face, embarrassed. I'm sorry. I don't usually break down crying. Neither do I. Apparently we're both liars. He laughed, surprised. You should sleep, Margaret said. Big day tomorrow, I assume. Concrete delivery at 7. Foundation work starts at 8. We're hoping to have the structural stuff done by end of week. And the money? For the bank? Stone's expression shifted. Something she couldn't read. Already handled. Lucas, $127,000 doesn't just... It's handled, Mama M. But how? Let me worry about it. Margaret wanted to argue, but she was tired. So tired. Okay, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Get some rest. She stood, then paused. Where are you sleeping? Porch. Got a sleeping bag in my saddlebag. Absolutely not. You're sleeping in David's room. Stone shook his head. I can't. You can and you will. The bed's made. The room's clean. It's been waiting for someone to use it for 15 years. Tonight, it's yours. Stone started to protest again. Margaret held up her hand. Lucas, I have spent 21 years not knowing if you were alive. I have spent 21 years imagining the worst. Tonight, you are sleeping under my roof where I can hear you breathing. That's not a request. Stone looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yes, ma'am. Margaret lay in her bed listening. Through the wall, she could hear Stone moving in David's room. The creak of the old bed frame. The shift of blankets. Sounds she hadn't heard in 15 years. Different person. Same room. Same feeling of fullness in a house that had been empty too long. She thought about Robert. What he would say if he could see this. Probably something practical. Well, Mar, looks like you finally got your wish. Now what are you going to do with 97 bikers eating us out of house and home? She smiled in the dark. Then she thought about David, her real son, the one who never came home. Would he be jealous? Would he understand? She thought he would. David had her heart, too big for his own good, always taking in strays, always believing the best in people. He would have liked Lucas. He would have understood why his mother couldn't let go. I found him, she whispered into the darkness. Or he found me, I don't know which. But he's home, Davy. After all these years, he came home. The house settled around her. Wind rattled the windows. Windows that had leaked for years and would now, after tomorrow, be properly sealed. For the first time in 8 years, Margaret Thornton fell asleep without crying. Morning came too fast. Margaret woke to the smell of coffee she hadn't made. For one disoriented moment, she thought Robert was alive again, standing in the kitchen the way he used to, brewing her first cup before she opened her eyes. Then she remembered. Lucas. She threw off the covers and hurried down the hall. David's bedroom door stood open. The bed was made, military corners, tight enough to bounce a quarter. Lucas wasn't there. Panic seized her chest. 21 years of losing him crashed back. He'd left. He'd disappeared again. It was all a dream, a cruel trick her mind played because she was old and alone and... "Kitchen, Mama M." His voice, real, present. Margaret grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. Stone sat at her kitchen table, 3 cups of coffee in front of him. He looked up when she appeared, and something shifted in his face. "You still make 3 cups," he said, force of habit. "One for Robert, one for David, one for you." "Yes." Stone pushed 1 cup toward the empty chair across from him. "Sit down. We need to talk about the money." Margaret's stomach dropped. She'd been dreading this conversation since yesterday. $127,000 didn't appear from nowhere. She'd been a teacher for 40 years. She knew math. Where did it come from? Stone didn't answer immediately. He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, and Margaret noticed his knuckles. Scarred, misshapen, broken and healed wrong, probably more than once. "The club has resources." "What kind of resources?" "The kind that can pay off a mortgage." "Lucas," Margaret's voice sharpened, "I didn't raise a liar. Don't start now." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe, or respect. "We own businesses, legitimate ones, motorcycle shops, tattoo parlors, a chain of diners across 3 states. We also do private security for companies that can't trust regular firms. It's legal, Mama M, all of it. And that's enough to pay off my house?" "That's enough to pay off 10 houses." Margaret sat back. The chair creaked under her slight weight. "I don't understand. You were homeless. You were on a bridge. How did you go from that to this?" Stone set down his cup. "Bear took me to the clubhouse that night, fed me, let me sleep on a couch. I woke up the next morning expecting to be thrown out, but instead the president, guy named Hawk, handed me a broom and told me to make myself useful." "Just like that?" "Just like that. I swept floors for 3 months. Then I graduated to oil changes, then engine work, then custom builds. Turns out I'm good with my hands." He flexed his scarred fingers. "Who knew?" "Robert knew. He said you had a natural talent for fixing things." Stone went still. "He said that?" "The day after you fixed the tractor, he came inside and told me, 'That boy's got gifts he doesn't even know about yet.' I never forgot it." Stone's jaw worked. He looked away, toward the window where the morning light was growing stronger. "I wish I could have told him thank you." He knew. "How?" "Because I told him. Every year on your birthday, I tell him what I imagine you were doing. Lucas is probably fixing cars somewhere. Lucas is probably helping people." Robert would say, "Mar, you don't know that." And I'd say, "Yes, I do. I know exactly who that boy is." Margaret's voice cracked. And I was right. The front door banged open. Bear's massive frame filled the entrance. "Stone, we got a problem. You need to come outside. Now." Stone was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor shifting from son to soldier in half a heartbeat. "What kind of problem?" "The kind with a badge." Margaret's blood went cold. Through the window, she saw them. 2 sheriff's cruisers parked at the end of her driveway. 4 officers standing outside their vehicles, hands on their belts, watching the bikers who were frozen mid-work on her roof. Stone's face went hard. "Stay inside, Mama M." "Lucas, I mean it. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe." He was gone before she could argue. Margaret moved to the window, her heart hammering. She watched Stone walk toward the officers, Bear flanking him on one side, two other bikers falling in on the other. His stride was different now. Not the boy she remembered. Something predatory, something dangerous. One of the officers stepped forward, tall, thin, with a face like a hatchet. "You Stone?" "Who's asking?" "Sheriff Dale Brennan, Carl Brennan's nephew." Margaret's knees buckled. She grabbed the windowsill, her vision swimming. Carl's nephew, Carl's family, here at her house, 21 years after Carl had dragged Lucas away. This wasn't a coincidence. Outside, Stone hadn't moved, but something in his posture changed, coiled tighter, like a spring about to release. "Carl's dead." "I know, I buried him." The sheriff's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Got a call this morning about a disturbance. Noise complaints. Unlicensed construction. Thought I'd come check it out personally. Construction's permitted. Filed the paperwork yesterday." "That's so? Mind if I see it?" "Mind if you get off this property? You're trespassing." "This isn't your property." "No, it belongs to Margaret Thornton, and she didn't invite you." The sheriff's eyes flicked to the house. Margaret ducked back from the window, but not fast enough. He'd seen her. "Mrs. Thornton and I go way back. Her husband called my uncle once, years ago, accused him of child abuse, tried to get him arrested." The sheriff's voice carried, clearly intended for Margaret to hear. Nothing came of it, of course, because it wasn't true. Carl was a good man who got slandered by outsiders who didn't understand discipline. Stone's voice dropped to something barely human. "Your uncle beat a 15-year-old boy into a coma. That boy was a liar and a thief who needed correction. That boy is standing in front of you." Silence. Margaret pressed her hand to her mouth. The sheriff's face went white, then red, then something ugly and twisted. "Lucas Brennan, well, the one that got away." "I didn't get away. I survived. There's a difference." "Uncle Carl always said you'd end up dead in a ditch." "Uncle Carl ended up dead in a hospital bed, choking on his own bile. Guess he was wrong about a lot of things." The sheriff's hand moved toward his holster. 96 bikers went completely still. Bear shifted his weight, positioning himself between Stone and the officer. "Think real careful about your next move, lawman." "Is that a threat?" "It's a suggestion." The tension stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Stone laughed. It was a cold sound, nothing like the broken laughter he'd shared with Margaret last night. This was different. This was the sound of a man who had stopped being afraid of anything a long time ago. "Dale, right? Let me explain something to you. I have 96 brothers behind me. By tomorrow, I'll have 140. By the end of the week, 300. Every single one of them knows what your uncle did to me. Every single one of them knows I spent years on the streets because of him. Every single one of them would ride through hell to protect that woman in that house. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to get in your car, you're going to drive away, and you're going to forget this address exists. Because if you don't, if you come back here, if you harass her, if you so much as drive past this property, I will make it my personal mission to end you. Not physically. I don't need to touch you. I'll end your career. I'll end your reputation. I'll dig up every skeleton in your family's closet, and I'll bury you with them. Your uncle spent his whole life getting away with things because nobody had the power to stop him. I have the power, and I have the patience. Test me." The sheriff's hand trembled over his holster. His partner, a younger man with nervous eyes, grabbed his arm. "Dale, let's go. This isn't worth it." "He can't talk to me like that." "Dale, please." The moment stretched. Then the sheriff stepped back. "This isn't over, Lucas." "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." The officers retreated to their cars. Engines started. Gravel crunched. They were gone. Bear exhaled. That was close. Too close. Stone turned toward the house. Through the window, his eyes met Margaret's. "Get everyone back to work. I need to talk to her." Margaret was shaking by the time he came inside. "Sit down," Stone said. "You look like you're going to pass out." "Carl's nephew. Carl's nephew is the sheriff." "I know. Did you know before you came here?" Stone hesitated. Margaret's eyes widened. "You did. You knew. And you came anyway." "I came because of it. Mama M, Dale Brennan has been making your life difficult for years. He's the one who denied your property tax extension. He's the one who pushed the bank to accelerate your foreclosure. He's the reason your insurance premiums doubled after Robert died." "What? Why would he?" "Because his uncle never forgave you and Robert for trying to save me. Carl spent years poisoning his family against you. When he died, Dale inherited that grudge. He's been slowly destroying you ever since, and you didn't even know it." Margaret's hands trembled in her lap. "All this time I thought it was just bad luck. The economy, medical bills. I never thought that someone was targeting you. Why would they? I'm nobody." Stone knelt in front of her, taking her shaking hands in his steady ones. "You're not nobody. You're the woman who tried to protect me. In the Brennan family, that makes you an enemy. Carl never forgot, and apparently, neither did his nephew. But I failed. I couldn't protect you. Carl took you anyway. You tried. That was enough to make them hate you." Margaret thought about the past 8 years. Every piece of bad luck, every unexpected bill, every denied application. She'd blamed herself. Blamed Robert's death. Blamed her own inability to manage money. She'd never blamed malice. "What do we do now?" Stone's grip tightened on her hands. "Now, we fight back." 30 minutes later, the house was a command center. Stone had called in reinforcements, not just bikers, lawyers. A woman named Patricia Chen arrived in a black sedan, looking wildly out of place among the leather vests and motorcycles. She was small, sharp-eyed, and carried a briefcase that probably cost more than Margaret's car. "Mrs. Thornton," Patricia shook her hand with brisk efficiency. "I'm the club's legal counsel. Stone asked me to look into your situation. I've been digging for the past 6 hours. What I've found is deeply disturbing." They gathered around Margaret's kitchen table. Margaret, Stone, Bear, and Patricia. The lawyer spread documents across the surface like a general mapping a battlefield. "Sheriff Dale Brennan has been systematically sabotaging your finances for at least 7 years. Tax assessments that were artificially inflated. Insurance claims that were mysteriously denied. A foreclosure process that was accelerated without proper notification. None of this was random, Mrs. Thornton. You've been targeted." Margaret stared at the papers. Numbers and legal jargon swam before her eyes. "Can you prove it?" "I can prove enough to make his life very uncomfortable. More importantly, I can delay your foreclosure indefinitely while we build a case. The bank won't want the publicity of being complicit in a corrupt sheriff's vendetta against a 73-year-old widow." Stone leaned forward. "What about criminal charges?" "Possible, but complicated. We'd need to involve the state attorney general, which takes time. My recommendation is a two-pronged approach. Civil suits to recover damages and media pressure to expose the corruption. Nothing scares a small-town sheriff more than cameras." Bear grunted. "We could also scare him the old-fashioned way." "No," Stone's voice was iron. "We do this clean, everything by the book. I won't give him any excuse to come after Margaret." "Stone's right," Patricia said. "Legal victories are permanent. Intimidation just creates more enemies. We play the long game." Margaret listened to them strategize around her kitchen table, and something shifted in her chest. For 8 years, she'd been alone, fighting alone, losing alone. Now she had an army. "Can I say something?" Everyone stopped. Margaret looked at each face in turn. Patricia with her sharp lawyer's eyes. Bear with his massive frame and gentle voice. Stone, her Lucas, who had somehow become this fierce protector. "I don't care about the money. I don't care about winning. Her voice wavered. I don't want anyone else to get hurt because of me. Stone reached across the table and took her hand. Mama M, you didn't hurt anyone. The Brennans did. All you did was try to help a starving kid. That's not a crime. That's grace. And I won't let them punish you for it. But what if Dale retaliates? What if he comes after your brothers? What if someone gets arrested or hurt or... Then we deal with it. Together. That's what family does. Family. The word hit Margaret like a physical blow. She'd lost her family, her husband, her son. She'd been alone so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have people standing beside her. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's fight. Stone smiled. For just a moment, he looked like the boy she remembered. That's my Mama M. The afternoon brought unexpected visitors. A pickup truck pulled into the driveway around 2 o'clock. Margaret didn't recognize it. Stone tensed, hand moving instinctively toward his belt, but Bear grabbed his arm. Easy. Look at the driver. An old man climbed out. White hair, weathered face, overalls stained with decades of farm work. He moved slowly, arthritis evident in every step, but his eyes were sharp. That's Henry Dawson, Margaret breathed. He owns the farm 3 miles down. Henry approached the porch where Margaret and Stone were standing. He looked at the bikers, the motorcycles, the organized chaos of construction, and then he looked at Margaret. Marge, heard you got some visitors. Henry, I can explain. No need. The old man turned to Stone. You the boy she took in? 20 years back? Stone straightened. Yes, sir. Henry studied him for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Thank you for coming back. Stone shook it, surprise flickering across his face. You know about that? Everyone knows. Small town, son. When Marge took in that runaway, whole county talked about it for months. Some folks said she was crazy. Some said she was a saint. I said she was the only one of us with enough guts to do what we all should have done. Henry turned back to Margaret. I also know about Dale Brennan, what he's been doing to you. Margaret's breath caught. You know. Suspected for years. Couldn't prove nothing, but the way your luck turned after Robert passed, he shook his head. That wasn't natural. That was deliberate, and it made me ashamed that I never spoke up. Henry, you couldn't have... Let me finish. The old man's voice hardened. I came here to tell you 2 things. First, I got a call an hour ago from Martha Jenkins. She runs the diner in town. She wants to know how she can help. So does Bill Patterson at the hardware store, and the Nguyen family that bought the old Miller place, and about 15 other folks who've been watching what's happening here and feeling the same shame I feel. Margaret pressed her hand to her mouth. Small towns got long memories, Henry continued. We remember when you taught our kids. We remember when Robert fixed our tractors for free. We remember when you brought casseroles to every funeral and flowers to every wedding. You and your husband spent 40 years being good neighbors. It's past time we return the favor. Stone stepped forward. What are you offering? Whatever you need, labor, materials, equipment. I got a backhoe sitting in my barn that hasn't been used in years. Bill's got lumber he'll sell at cost. Martha's organizing meal deliveries so your boys don't gotta cook. We ain't got much money, but we got hands, and we got time. Why? Stone's voice was thick. You don't know us. You don't know the club. Don't need to. I know Marge, and anyone who'd ride 97 motorcycles across the country to help her is good enough for me. Margaret burst into tears. Henry patted her shoulder awkwardly. Now, save that for later. Right now, we got work to do. Within an hour, the dynamic had completely changed. Pickup trucks lined the road. Farmers in overalls worked alongside bikers in leather. Hammers swung in rhythm. Laughter mixed with the sounds of construction. Margaret stood on her porch, watching her world transform. Stone appeared beside her. You okay? I don't understand any of this. What's not to understand? 24 hours ago, I was about to lose everything. Now I have 97 bikers fixing my house, and half the town bringing casseroles. None of it makes sense. Stone leaned against the railing. You want to know what I learned on the streets? What? That there are two kinds of people in the world. People who walk past suffering and people who stop. You're a stopper, Mama M. You've always been a stopper. You stopped for me when everyone else walked past. And now, all these people, he gestured at the controlled chaos in her yard. They're stopping for you. Because stoppers recognize each other. Because kindness creates more kindness. Because what you put into the world eventually comes back. That sounds like something from a fortune cookie. Stone laughed. Maybe. Doesn't make it less true. A motorcycle roared up the driveway. Not a Harley like the others. Something smaller, faster. The rider was young, maybe early 20s, with wild dark hair and anxious eyes. He skidded to a stop and practically fell off the bike in his haste. Stone! Stone, we got a problem! Stone pushed off the railing, instantly alert. What is it? Brennan, he's at the clubhouse in Des Moines. He showed up with state troopers. They're saying they have a warrant. Bear came running from behind the house. I just got a call. Same thing. They're searching the Chicago Chapter 2 and Milwaukee, 3 simultaneous raids. Stone's face went pale. That's not possible. We haven't done anything. Doesn't matter. They're looking for something, or pretending to. Margaret's heart dropped. This is my fault. He's retaliating because of me. No, Stone's voice was hard. He's retaliating because of me. He's been waiting for an excuse since I left his uncle's house. Now he has one. He turned to Bear. Call everyone. Emergency meeting. Now. The bikers gathered in Margaret's barn. 96 men, standing shoulder to shoulder, their faces grim. Stone stood on a hay bale so everyone could see him. By now you've all heard. 3 of our chapters are being raided as we speak. This is not a coincidence. Sheriff Dale Brennan has connections we didn't know about. He's using them to come after us because we're helping Margaret. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Here's what we know. The warrants are technically legal, which means they found a judge somewhere willing to sign off. That takes political juice. Brennan's got more friends than we thought. A biker near the front spoke up. What are they looking for? Officially, drugs and weapons. Unofficially, anything they can use to shut us down. They won't find either, because we run clean. But that's not the point. The point is intimidation. They want us to pack up and leave Margaret to the wolves. Silence. Then Bear's voice, low and steady. What's the play, Stone? Stone looked out at his brothers. These men had followed him for years. They'd trusted him with their lives, their families, their futures. Now he was asking them to risk all of that for a 73-year-old woman most of them had never met. The play is, we stay. We finish what we started. We don't back down, we don't get scared, and we don't give them any excuse to arrest us. Everything by the book. Every single thing. If a brother so much as jaywalks, I'll deal with him myself. We're going to be so clean, so legal, so above reproach that when this is over, Dale Brennan won't just lose his job, he'll lose everything. A voice from the back. And if it doesn't work, if they find something they can pin on us? Stone's jaw tightened. Then I take the fall. Alone. None of this traces back to the club. The money for Margaret's house came from my personal accounts. The legal work is being done through my private attorney. If anyone goes down for this, it's me and only me. The barn erupted. No way! We're not letting you do that. Stone, that's suicide. Stone raised his hand. Silence fell. I wasn't asking permission. I'm telling you how it is. Margaret Thornton saved my life. I'm going to save hers. If that costs me everything I built, so be it. That's my choice. Your choice is whether you stand with me until it's done. No one moved. Then Bear stepped forward. I pulled you off that bridge 15 years ago. You think I'm going to let you fall now? I'm in. Till the end. One by one, the others followed. I'm in. In. Whatever it takes. Till the end, 96 voices, 96 commitments, 96 brothers choosing loyalty over safety. Stone nodded. His eyes were bright. Then let's get back to work. The barn emptied. Margaret stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She'd heard everything. Stone walked toward her, and she could see it in his eyes. The boy who'd been alone in her shed. The man who'd built a family from nothing. The leader who would sacrifice himself without hesitation. "You can't," she whispered. "Can't what?" "Go to prison for me. Lose everything for me. I won't let you." Stone stopped in front of her. He was so tall now, so different from the skeleton she'd found 21 years ago. But when he looked at her, she could still see that hungry, desperate child. "Mama M, do you know why I named the program after you?" "What?" "Mama M's Table, the program for homeless kids. Do you know why I chose that name?" Margaret shook her head. "Because of what you said the first night you let me stay. I was sitting at your table, eating soup so fast I was choking on it, and you put your hand on my arm and said, 'Slow down, sweetheart. There's more where that came from. At this table, nobody goes hungry.' And I thought that was what heaven must be like. A table where nobody goes hungry, a place where somebody sees you." Margaret remembered. God, she remembered everything about that night. "That's all I ever wanted to build," Stone continued. "Tables where nobody goes hungry. Places where people see each other. You taught me that was possible. You taught me that one person could make a difference. So if I have to go to prison to protect you, that's just paying forward what you gave me. And it's worth it. Every single day, it's worth it." Margaret reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "Lucas James Brennan, you listen to me. You are not going to prison. You are not going to lose everything. You are going to finish fixing my house, and then you are going to come back for Thanksgiving and Christmas and every other holiday until I die. Do you understand me?" Stone's composure cracked. "Mama M, I lost you once. I am not losing you again. So you figure out another way. You use that big brain of yours and you find a solution that doesn't end with you behind bars. Because I didn't spend 21 years praying for you to come home just to watch you throw your life away. That is not happening, not on my watch." Stone stared at her. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Now get back to work. That roof isn't going to fix itself." Stone laughed, a real laugh, warm and full. "I love you, Mama M." "I love you too, you stubborn fool. Now go." He went. Margaret watched him walk back toward the house, shouting orders, organizing teams, being the leader his brothers needed him to be. And she made herself a promise. She was not going to let Dale Brennan win. Not this time. Not ever again. The sun set over Cedar Falls, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Hammers still swung. Trucks still rumbled. The work continued. But somewhere in the gathering darkness, Margaret knew their enemies were planning. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. 3 days passed like bullets. Margaret barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard motorcycle engines and police sirens tangled together in nightmares that left her shaking. The raids had found nothing. Patricia Chen called at midnight on the second day with the news. All 3 chapters cleared, no charges filed, warrants invalidated by a federal judge who found them irregularly obtained. But Stone wasn't celebrating. "He's not done," he told Margaret over coffee on day 4. "Dale's just getting started. This was a test. He wanted to see what we'd do, how we'd react, who our allies are. And now he knows. Now he knows." Margaret wrapped her hands around her cup. Her kitchen had become a war room, maps on the table, phone chargers snaking across the counter, Bear's laptop open to what looked like financial records. "What's our next move?" Stone exchanged a glance with Bear. "We found something." Margaret's stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" Bear turned the laptop toward her. The screen showed columns of numbers, dates, names she didn't recognize. Dale Brennan has been skimming from the county budget for 6 years. Property seizures that never got recorded. Fines that disappeared into personal accounts. We're talking $500,000, minimum. How did you find this? We have friends in low places. Bear's voice was grim. And high ones. A forensic accountant in Chicago owed Stone a favor. Took him 2 days to trace the money. Margaret stared at the numbers. Her mind couldn't process them. $500,000 stolen from her neighbors, from the county that had been her home for 50 years. Can we prove it? We can prove enough to start an investigation. The problem is who investigates. Dale controls local law enforcement. His friends are in the state police. We need to go federal. FBI? Stone nodded. I've got a meeting tomorrow, a contact in the Des Moines field office. But here's the thing, Mama M. Once we go down this road, there's no turning back. Dale will know it was us. He'll come at us with everything he has. He's already coming at us with everything he has. Not even close. Right now he's playing political games. If we expose him, he'll get desperate. Desperate men do dangerous things. Margaret thought about it. She thought about Robert, who'd spent his whole life avoiding conflict. He would have told her to let it go, to sell the house and move somewhere far away, to stop fighting battles she couldn't win. But Robert wasn't here anymore, and Margaret was tired of running. Do it, she said. Stone raised an eyebrow. You're sure? I'm 73 years old. I've lost my husband. I've lost my son. I spent 21 years thinking I'd lost you. I don't have much left to lose, Lucas, but I still have my dignity, and I will not let that man run me out of my home. Stone smiled. It was fierce and proud and something else, something that looked almost like awe. Robert was a lucky man. Robert would tell you I'm too stubborn for my own good. He'd be right. The door banged open. A young biker Margaret had learned to recognize as Crash burst in, breathless and pale. Stone, someone's at the front gate. You need to see this. Everyone moved. Margaret followed Stone outside, ignoring his protests. What she saw stopped her cold. A woman stood at the end of the driveway. Mid-40s, maybe. Blonde hair pulled back severely. A face that might have been pretty once, but was now carved by years of something hard. She wasn't alone. A girl stood beside her. 16, maybe 17. Same blonde hair, same sharp features. But her eyes were different. Wild, scared, darting between the bikers like a trapped animal. Stone went rigid. No, he breathed. That's not possible. Who is it? Margaret asked. Stone didn't answer. He was already walking toward the gate, his brothers parting before him like water. The woman watched him approach. Her expression was impossible to read. Hello, Lucas. Stone stopped 10 feet away. His hands were shaking. Sarah. Margaret's heart stopped. Sarah, Lucas's mother. The woman he'd said died of cancer when he was 14. But she was standing right there, alive, breathing, looking at her son with eyes that held no warmth at all. You look surprised, Sarah said. Did you think I was dead? Carl told me you died. He showed me a death certificate. Carl was a liar, among other things. Stone's voice cracked. You've been alive this whole time? 22 years. And you never... He couldn't finish the sentence. Never looked for you? No, I didn't. The words hung in the air like poison. Margaret felt sick. She watched Stone's face cycle through emotions, shock, confusion, grief, and finally something that looked like murder. Why? Because Carl told me you were dangerous, violent, unstable. He said you threatened me with a knife when you were 12. Said you were the reason I got sick in the first place, the stress of raising you. He convinced me that leaving was the only way to survive. And you believed him? I was dying, Lucas, or I thought I was. The cancer diagnosis, the treatments, it was all fake. I didn't find out until years later. By then, I'd built a new life, new name, new family. Sarah's voice was flat, rehearsed. I told myself you were better off without me. Stone made a sound that wasn't quite human. Bear moved closer, ready to intervene, but Stone held up his hand. Why are you here now? After 22 years of nothing, why show up at my doorstep? Sarah's mask cracked. Just a fraction. Just enough to show the fear underneath. Because of her, she pushed the girl forward. This is Emma, your half-sister, and she needs help that I can't give her. The girl, Emma, flinched at her mother's touch. Margaret saw it instantly. The way she held her arms, the way she wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, the fading bruise on her cheekbone, poorly hidden by makeup. Margaret knew those signs. She'd seen them on a 15-year-old boy hiding in her shed. Who hurt her? Stone's voice was ice. Sarah looked away. My husband, her stepfather. Where is he now? Home, waiting for us to come back. You brought her here to hide her? I brought her here because I didn't know where else to go. Sarah's composure finally shattered. I know what I did to you, Lucas. I know I abandoned you. I know Carl destroyed your childhood while I was off pretending you didn't exist. I've spent 20 years telling myself I had no choice, but I had choices. I just made the wrong ones. Every single time, I made the wrong ones. Stone didn't move. Margaret watched him struggle. Watched the boy he'd been war with the man he'd become. 22 years of abandonment. 22 years of believing his mother died. And now she was here, asking for help, offering a sister he'd never known existed. It was too much, even for Stone. Margaret stepped forward. Emma. She kept her voice soft, gentle, the same voice she'd used in a cold shed 2 decades ago. When did you last eat? The girl looked up. Her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. Yesterday, maybe. Come inside. I'll make you something. Mama, Stone started. Hush. Margaret didn't look at him. She held out her hand to Emma. Whatever's happening between your mother and your brother, you don't have to be in the middle of it. Come inside, eat, rest. Everything else can wait. Emma hesitated. Then she took Margaret's hand. It was cold, thin, trembling, just like Lucas's had been. Margaret led her toward the house, past the frozen bikers, past Sarah's desperate eyes, past Stone's shattered expression. Some things never change. An hour later, Emma was asleep on the couch. Margaret sat beside her, watching her breathe, watching her flinch in her dreams, watching another broken child find a moment's peace under her roof. Stone appeared in the doorway. She okay? For now, she ate 3 sandwiches and half a pot of soup before she could barely keep her eyes open. Reminds me of someone. Stone didn't smile. I don't know what to do. About Emma or about your mother? Either. Both. He leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. 22 years, Mama M. She let me believe she was dead for 22 years. She let Carl torture me while she was off living her new life. And now she just shows up and expects me to, what, forgive her? Help her? She doesn't expect anything. She's desperate. There's a difference. She doesn't deserve my help. No, she doesn't. Margaret looked down at Emma's sleeping face. But this girl didn't do anything wrong. This girl is exactly where you were 21 years ago. Hurt, scared, running from a monster. And she has no one. She has a mother. Does she? Look at her, Lucas. Really look at her. Does she look like someone who has a mother? Stone walked into the room. He stood over the couch, staring down at his half-sister. His jaw worked. She looks like me. She looks like you. I didn't even know she existed. Neither did I, but she exists now. And she's here. And you have to decide what kind of man you're going to be. Stone's hands curled into fists. If I help her, I have to deal with Sarah. Yes. I don't know if I can do that without falling apart. His silence was answer enough. Margaret stood. She walked to him and took his scarred hands in her weathered ones. "Lucas, listen to me. You don't have to forgive Sarah. You don't have to have a relationship with her. You don't have to pretend that what she did was okay, but you can still help Emma. Those are separate things. You can be furious with your mother and still save your sister. That's not weakness, that's strength." Stone's eyes were wet. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. I just remember being young and making impossible choices. And I remember that the choices that felt the hardest were usually the most important." Outside, voices rose. Bear appeared in the doorway. "Stone, we got another problem. Sarah's asking to talk to you, and she's not alone anymore." Stone wiped his eyes. "What do you mean?" "A car just pulled up. Some guy in a suit. She says he's her lawyer." Margaret and Stone exchanged glances. This was about to get complicated. The lawyer's name was Harrison Webb. He sat across from Stone in Margaret's kitchen, looking deeply uncomfortable surrounded by bikers. Sarah sat beside him, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "Mr. Stone." "Just Stone." "Stone, then. My client is seeking protective custody for her daughter Emma. Given your resources, she believes you're the best equipped to provide that protection." "From who?" Webb shifted. "Her husband, Richard Calloway." Stone went very still. "Calloway? As in the Calloway family? You know them?" "Everyone in the Midwest knows them. Construction empire, political connections, rumored mob ties." "The rumors are accurate." Webb's voice dropped. "Richard Calloway is a very dangerous man. He has connections in law enforcement, politics, and organized crime. When he discovers Emma is missing, and he will discover it, he will come looking for her, with considerable force." Margaret's blood ran cold. "You brought this to our doorstep?" Stone's voice was deadly quiet. "You brought a mob family's attention to this house? To her?" Sarah flinched. "I didn't know where else to go." "How about literally anywhere else? How about the FBI? Witness protection? Anywhere that isn't a 73-year-old woman's farmhouse." "Richard has people in the FBI. He has people everywhere. The only thing he doesn't have is people in your world." Sarah leaned forward, desperate. "The Hells Angels are the one organization he can't touch. You're too decentralized, too loyal, too unpredictable. That's why I came to you. You're the only ones who can protect her." Stone slammed his hand on the table. Everyone jumped. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I came here to save Margaret from a corrupt sheriff. Now you're telling me I also have to protect her from a mob family? This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't—" "Lucas!" Margaret's voice cut through his tirade. "Enough!" He turned to her, fury in his eyes. "Mama M, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. Another child is in danger. Another monster is hunting them. The details are different, but the story is the same." She stood, straightening her spine despite the arthritis that made every movement painful. "You said you built an organization to save kids like you. Well, here's one. Right in front of you. What are you going to do about it?" Stone stared at her. The fury drained from his face, replaced by something else. Something that looked like surrender. "You're going to be the death of me." "Probably, but not today." Stone turned back to Webb. "What do you need?" "Time. We're filing for emergency custody and a restraining order. If we can keep Emma hidden for 72 hours, we can get her into the system legally. After that, Richard can't touch her without going through the courts. And before that? Before that, she needs to disappear." Stone looked at Bear. Something passed between them, a silent communication built on years of brotherhood. "We can do 72 hours. Webb sagged with relief. "Thank you. I know this isn't—" "Save it. I'm not doing this for you or for Sarah. I'm doing it for Emma. Now get out of my sight before I change my mind." Sarah stood. Her eyes found Stone's one last time. "Lucas, I know you hate me." "I don't hate you." His voice was hollow. I don't feel anything for you at all. And that's worse, isn't it? Sarah had no answer. She left. Webb followed. The kitchen fell silent. Margaret walked to Stone and put her hand on his arm. You did the right thing. Did I? I just painted a target on this house. On you. On all of us. The target was already there. Dale Brennan made sure of that. Now we just have more enemies. Stone laughed bitterly. More enemies. That's one way to put it. Lucas, look at me. Margaret waited until his eyes met hers. I have lived 73 years. I have buried a husband and a son. I have survived things that should have killed me. Do you really think I'm afraid of some rich man with a bad temper? You should be. Maybe, but I'm not. And do you want to know why? Why? Margaret squeezed his arm. Because I have 97 bikers in my yard, a lawyer who found $500,000 in stolen money, and a son who came back from the dead. I like my odds. Stone stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. A real laugh this time. Surprised and warm and something like hope. You're insane. I prefer optimistic. Same thing, coming from you. The next 24 hours were a blur. Stone mobilized his network with military precision. Emma was moved 3 times. First to the barn, then to Henry Dawson's farm, then to a safe house 40 miles away that Margaret didn't know existed. Bikers rotated in shifts, watching the roads, monitoring police scanners, creating a web of protection that even Richard Calloway would struggle to penetrate. And through it all, Margaret sat at her kitchen table and made sandwiches. It was the only thing she knew how to do. The only thing that felt real when everything else was spinning out of control. Feed people. Keep them strong. At midnight, Stone found her still at the counter, spreading mayonnaise on her 47th slice of bread. Mama M, you need to sleep. I'll sleep when this is over. It won't be over for a while. Then I'll sleep later. Stone took the butter knife from her hand. Margaret, please. She looked up at him, her Lucas, her boy, so big now, so capable, so burdened with responsibilities that no one should have to carry. I'm scared. The admission surprised her as much as it surprised him. Of what? Of losing you again. Of losing this. She gestured vaguely at the house, the chaos outside, the impossible situation they'd found themselves in. For 2 days I had you back. For 2 days I felt like I had a family again. And now everything is falling apart, and I don't know how to stop it. Stone set down the knife. He pulled out a chair and sat beside her, taking her hands in his. Listen to me. Whatever happens, with Brennan, with Calloway, with any of it, you're not losing me. Not again. Not ever. I spent 21 years staying away because I thought I wasn't good enough. Because I thought I needed to earn the right to come back. But you know what I realized, sitting in this kitchen yesterday? What? That I was wrong. I was always good enough. You saw it from the beginning. You never needed me to save 800 kids or build an empire or become somebody important. You just needed me to come home. His voice cracked. And I wasted 21 years that we could have had together. Margaret started crying. I'm sorry, Stone continued. I'm sorry for staying away. I'm sorry for not calling. I'm sorry for watching from a distance instead of being here. I'm sorry for all the Christmases and Thanksgivings and random Tuesdays that we missed. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making up for it. But right now I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Margaret pulled him into a hug. She held him the way she'd held him 21 years ago, when he was a skeleton in her shed, and she was the only thing standing between him and death. I trust you, she whispered. I've always trusted you. Then trust me when I say we're going to win. Brennan, Calloway, all of it. We're going to win. And when it's over, I'm going to take you out for the biggest steak dinner you've ever seen. Margaret laughed through her tears. I'm 73. I can't eat steak. Fine. The biggest salad dinner you've ever seen. That's more like it. They held each other in the quiet kitchen while the world outside prepared for war. And somewhere in the darkness, Margaret felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. The kind that doesn't come from circumstances, but from knowing you're not alone. She wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Lucas. They were family, and family doesn't give up. Not ever. The call came at 3 in the morning. Bear's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Stone, Calloway's people found the safe house. They're moving on Emma." Stone was on his feet before the words finished. "How many?" "6 vehicles, maybe 20 men." "Is she safe?" "For now. Wrench and his crew are holding them off, but they're outnumbered. We need everyone." Stone grabbed his jacket, his keys, his gun. Margaret stood in the doorway, her face pale. "Lucas, stay here, lock the doors. Don't let anyone in except Bear or me." "What if you don't come back?" Stone stopped. He turned and looked at her. This woman who had saved him, who had waited for him, who had given him everything. "I'll come back. Promise me." "I promise." Then he was gone. The roar of motorcycles filled the night as 96 Hell's Angels rode toward battle. Margaret stood alone in her kitchen, listening to the engines fade. She thought about praying. She thought about crying. Instead, she picked up the butter knife and went back to making sandwiches. It was all she could do. And sometimes that has to be enough. The sandwiches piled up on Margaret's counter like a fortress. Turkey and Swiss, ham and cheddar, peanut butter for the ones who couldn't eat meat. Her hands moved automatically while her mind replayed Stone's promise over and over. "I'll come back. I'll come back. I'll come back." The clock on the wall ticked past 4 in the morning, then 5. The sky outside began to lighten, and still, no word. Margaret's phone sat silent on the table. She'd checked it 47 times. She knew because she'd started counting after the first dozen. At 5:47, headlights swept across her kitchen window. She grabbed Robert's shotgun and moved to the door, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. The knock came. 3 quick raps. "Mama M, it's Bear." She threw open the door. Bear stood on her porch, covered in dirt and something dark that might have been blood. His face was exhausted but intact. "Is he?" "He's fine. Everyone's fine. Well, mostly fine. Crash broke his arm and Diesel took some glass to the shoulder, but nobody's dead." Margaret's knees buckled. She grabbed the doorframe. "Where is he?" "On his way. He sent me ahead to make sure you were okay." "I'm fine. I've been making sandwiches." Bear looked past her at the mountain of food on the counter. Something like a smile crossed his battered face. "That's a lot of sandwiches." "I didn't know what else to do." "You did exactly right, ma'am. The boys are going to be hungry as hell." The roar of motorcycles filled the dawn air. Margaret pushed past Bear and ran to the porch, her arthritic hips screaming in protest. She didn't care. She couldn't care about anything except the figure climbing off the lead bike. Stone was filthy. His jacket was torn. There was a cut above his left eye that had bled down the side of his face. But he was walking toward her. He was alive. Margaret met him halfway across the yard and threw her arms around him, not caring about the dirt or the blood or the 95 men watching. "You promised," she sobbed into his chest. "You promised you'd come back." "I keep my promises, Mama M." She pulled back and looked at his face. The cut was shallow, but ugly. "You're hurt. You should see the other guy." "This isn't funny, Lucas." "No, it's not." Stone's expression darkened. "But it's over. Calloway's men retreated. Emma's safe. We moved her to a federal facility an hour ago. Patricia pulled some strings with the FBI contact. Richard Calloway can't touch her now." Margaret's breath caught. "The FBI? Turns out they've been looking for an excuse to investigate him for years. We gave them one. His men were caught on camera trying to abduct a minor. That's federal charges. He's going to be too busy with lawyers to worry about Emma for a long time." And Dale Brennan? Stone's jaw tightened. That's the other thing. We need to talk inside. The kitchen had transformed into a makeshift hospital. Margaret watched in amazement as bikers cleaned each other's wounds with the efficiency of combat medics. Diesel sat shirtless while a younger man pulled glass from his shoulder. Crash cradled his broken arm, grimacing but refusing to make a sound. Stone sat at the table, letting Margaret dab at the cut on his forehead with antiseptic. Hold still. It stings. Good. Maybe next time you'll duck. Stone laughed despite everything. Yes, ma'am. Bear joined them, dropping heavily into a chair across the table. His eyes were serious. Tell her. Margaret's hand froze. Tell me what? Stone looked at Bear, then back at Margaret. During the fight with Calloway's men, we got a call. Patricia's FBI contact came through with the investigation into Dale Brennan. They found everything. The skimming, the fraud, the harassment campaign against you. They also found something else. Margaret's stomach dropped. What? Evidence that Dale helped his uncle 21 years ago. The words hung in the air. Margaret didn't understand at first. Couldn't understand. Helped him how? Stone's voice was barely a whisper. Carl couldn't have taken me back without help. The court order that gave him custody, the sheriff who came to your door, the way everything happened so fast you couldn't fight it. Dale was behind all of it. He was 22 years old, fresh out of law school, and he used his connections to make sure his uncle got me back. The room went silent. Even the bikers stopped what they were doing. Margaret felt something inside her crack. He was the reason. He was the reason Carl won. He was the reason I spent 2 more years getting beaten. He was the reason for everything that came after. Margaret's hand began to shake. I called him. Her voice was hollow. After you were taken, I called Dale Brennan's office asking for help. I begged him to intervene. And he told me there was nothing he could do. He told me Carl had legal custody and I needed to accept it. Stone reached over and took her trembling hand. You didn't know. I should have known. I should have fought harder. I should have... Mama M, stop. Stone's grip tightened. You did everything you could. You called 27 times. You hired lawyers you couldn't afford. You never stopped trying. The system failed us, not you. Margaret looked at him through tears. What happens now? Now, Dale Brennan goes to prison. The FBI is moving on him today. By this afternoon, he'll be in federal custody, facing enough charges to keep him locked up for decades. Something shifted in Margaret's chest. 21 years of pain. 21 years of wondering if she could have done more. 21 years of guilt that never quite faded. And finally, someone was going to pay. Good, she whispered. It was the only word she could manage, but it was enough. The arrest happened at noon. Margaret watched it on the television in her living room, surrounded by bikers who had never felt more like family. The news cameras captured everything. Dale Brennan in handcuffs, being led out of the sheriff's station he'd run for 15 years. His face was pale, confused, like he couldn't understand how his carefully constructed world had fallen apart in a single morning. A reporter's voice narrated the scene. Sheriff Dale Brennan was arrested this morning on federal charges including embezzlement, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Sources say the investigation also uncovered evidence linking Brennan to a decades-old case involving the false imprisonment of a minor. Stone turned off the television. You okay? Margaret stared at the blank screen. I don't know what I am. That's fair. I thought I'd feel happy or relieved or something, but I just feel empty? She looked at him. How did you know? Because I felt the same way when Carl died. I thought watching him suffer would give me peace. It didn't. It just reminded me of all the years I'd lost. Margaret nodded slowly. So what do we do with that? The emptiness. Stone was quiet for a moment. We fill it with something better, with family, with purpose. with all the things they tried to take from us. Margaret reached over and took his hand. You're too wise for a man your age. I had a good teacher. A knock at the door interrupted them. Bear answered it and stepped back in surprise. Stone, you're going to want to see this. Margaret and Stone followed him to the porch. A woman stood in the driveway. Mid-30s, professional clothes, expensive shoes that were completely wrong for a farm. She clutched a folder to her chest like a shield. Mr. Stone, I'm Rebecca Walsh. I'm with the Iowa Department of Human Services. Stone's expression went carefully neutral. What can I do for you? I'm here about Emma Calloway. Rebecca glanced at the bikers surrounding her with obvious nervousness. And about your organization, Mama M's Table. Margaret stepped forward. What about it? Rebecca looked at her with something like wonder. Mrs. Thornton, I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. Your phone has been busy. What do you want? To thank you and to ask for your help. The conversation moved inside. Rebecca sat at Margaret's kitchen table, looking hilariously out of place among the sandwich platters and biker gear. But her voice was steady and her eyes were sincere. The state has been aware of Mama M's Table for several years. What you've done, what your organization has done, is remarkable. 847 young people rescued from the streets. 93% success rate in long-term rehabilitation. Those numbers are unprecedented. Stone folded his arms. We don't need government recognition. No, but we need you. Rebecca opened her folder. Iowa's foster system is overwhelmed. We have 3,000 kids in care and not nearly enough resources to help them. Half of them age out with nothing. No skills, no support, no future. Most end up homeless or in prison. I know the statistics. I was one of them. Exactly. You understand what these kids need in a way our system doesn't. That's why I'm here. Rebecca pulled out a document and slid it across the table. We want to partner with Mama M's Table. Official recognition, state funding, access to kids in the system who need what you provide. Stone didn't touch the paper. What's the catch? No catch, just oversight. We need to ensure the kids are safe, that the program meets certain standards. Basic stuff. You want to regulate us? We want to legitimize you. There's a difference. Rebecca leaned forward. Mr. Stone, I know who you are. I know what the Hells Angels represent. And frankly, I don't care. What I care about is results. Your program works. Our system doesn't. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help more kids, even if that means partnering with people my colleagues would never approve of. Margaret looked at Stone. Something passed between them. Give us a moment, Stone said. Rebecca nodded and stepped outside. Margaret waited until the door closed. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's a trap. And if it's not? Stone ran his hand through his hair. If it's not, then it's everything we've worked for. Legitimate recognition, real resources, the ability to help hundreds more kids. So what's the problem? The problem is that I don't trust anyone in a suit showing up with a folder full of promises. The last time someone did that, I ended up in Carl's custody. Margaret nodded slowly. Lucas, look at me. He met her eyes. 21 years ago, I opened a shed door and found a starving boy. I didn't know if he was dangerous. I didn't know if he'd rob me or hurt me or disappear in the night. But I took a chance because my gut told me he was worth it. Stone's expression softened. Your gut's rarely wrong. No, it's not. Margaret gestured toward the door where Rebecca waited. That woman is terrified. Did you see her hands shaking? She's risking her career coming to you. Government people don't partner with motorcycle clubs without catching hell from their bosses. She's doing it anyway. That tells me something. What does it tell you? That she's desperate, that she's seen things in the foster system that haunt her, that she's willing to try anything, even working with a bunch of scary bikers, if it means saving one more kid. Stone was silent for a long moment. Then he walked to the door and opened it. Ms. Walsh, come back in. We have some questions. The negotiation lasted 3 hours. By the end, Margaret's head was spinning with terms and conditions and legal frameworks she didn't fully understand. But she understood the outcome. Mama M's table was going legitimate. State funding, official partnerships, access to kids in the system who needed exactly what Stone's organization provided. And at the center of it all, one requirement that Rebecca had insisted upon. We need a face, someone the public can trust, someone who represents what this program is really about. Rebecca looked directly at Margaret. We need you, Mrs. Thornton. Margaret blinked. Me? You're the founder, the inspiration, the proof that ordinary people can make extraordinary differences. I'm not the founder. Lucas named it after you, built it because of you. Every kid who comes through learns your story first. Rebecca's voice was gentle but firm. Mrs. Thornton, you fed a hungry boy in 2003. That act of kindness created a ripple effect that has saved hundreds of lives. Don't you think the world should know about that? Margaret looked at Stone. He was smiling. She's right, Mama M. This whole thing exists because of you. Time to stop hiding in the shadows. I'm 73 years old. I don't want to be famous. Too late. Stone's grin widened. Your story's already out there. The arrest this morning? The news is connecting the dots. By tomorrow, everyone's going to know about the woman who took in a homeless boy and inspired a movement. Margaret's heart raced. I didn't do it for attention. I know. That's why you deserve it. Before Margaret could respond, Bear burst through the door. Stone, you need to see this, now! They gathered around Bear's phone. The screen showed a news clip, Margaret's house, her driveway, the army of motorcycles that had been there for days. But it was the headline that made Margaret's breath catch. Bikers versus the system, how 97 Hells Angels saved a widow from corrupt sheriff. The reporter's voice played over footage of the farmhouse. In a story that has captured the nation's attention, a 73-year-old Iowa widow found herself at the center of an unlikely rescue mission. Margaret Thornton, facing foreclosure after years of harassment by now-arrested Sheriff Dale Brennan, was saved by 97 members of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. But the real story goes much deeper. The clip cut to an interview with Henry Dawson. Marge Thornton is the best person I know. She spent her whole life helping others. When those bikers showed up, I thought there was going to be trouble. Turns out, they were the only ones willing to fight for her. Another cut. Martha from the diner. I've been serving those boys all week. They're not what you think. They're polite, they're kind, and they love that woman like she's their own mother. She must have done something pretty special to earn that kind of loyalty. Stone muted the phone. The room was silent. Margaret stared at the frozen image on the screen. Her own face, captured by some photographer she hadn't even noticed, looking out her kitchen window. I don't understand. People love an underdog story, Mama M. Corrupt sheriff harasses elderly widow. Biker gang rides to the rescue. It's got everything, good versus evil, unexpected heroes, justice prevailing. But it's not that simple. The real story is so much more complicated. It always is. Stone put his arm around her shoulders. But sometimes the simple version is the one people need to hear. And sometimes the simple version leads them to the truth. Margaret's phone, which she'd forgotten existed, suddenly exploded with notifications. Texts from numbers she didn't recognize. Voicemails from area codes across the country. Email alerts chiming so fast the sounds blurred together. What's happening? Bear checked his own phone. The story's trending. Number 4, nationwide, and climbing. Stone let out a low whistle. Mama M, I think you're about to become famous, whether you want to or not. Margaret sank into a kitchen chair. This wasn't what she'd wanted. She just wanted Lucas back. She just wanted to keep her house. She'd never asked to be the face of a movement, the symbol of anything, the story that captured a nation's attention. But looking around her kitchen, at Stone, at Bear, at the dozens of bikers who had become her family, she realized something. This wasn't about her anymore. It never had been. It was about every hungry kid sleeping in a shed somewhere, every foster child aging out of the system with nothing, every broken person who needed someone to see them, to feed them, to say, "You're worth fighting for." If her story could help them, then maybe fame wasn't such a bad thing. "Okay," she said quietly. Stone looked at her. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I'll do it. The interviews, the publicity, whatever you need." "You sure?" Margaret straightened her spine. "I spent 21 years waiting for you to come home. I can handle a few cameras." Stone laughed and pulled her into a hug. "That's my Mama M." The next 48 hours were chaos. News vans lined the road outside Margaret's property. Reporters shouted questions every time someone stepped outside. Phone calls came from morning shows, newspapers, even a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell the full story. Patricia Chen handled most of it, fielding requests and scheduling interviews with the efficiency of a general planning a military campaign. But it was the letters that affected Margaret most. They started arriving on day 2. Handwritten notes from across the country, people sharing their own stories, their own struggles, their own moments when a stranger's kindness changed everything. A woman in Texas whose neighbor paid her electric bill when she couldn't afford to keep the lights on. A man in Oregon who gave his sandwich to a homeless veteran and ended up hiring him. A teenager in Florida who was about to age out of foster care and wanted to know how to find Mama M's table. "There are hundreds of them," Margaret said, staring at the pile on her kitchen table. "Where did they all come from?" Stone picked up a letter at random, read it, set it down with shaking hands. "From everywhere. You gave people permission to talk about kindness like it matters. Turns out, a lot of them were waiting for that permission." Margaret picked up another letter, then another, then another. Each one a story, each one a life touched by something small that became something big. She thought about the bowl of soup she'd given Lucas 21 years ago. She'd never expected it to lead here. But here she was. And somehow, impossibly, it felt right. On the 3rd morning, Emma arrived. Margaret heard the car before she saw it, looked up from her letters to see a black SUV pulling into the driveway, flanked by 2 motorcycles. Stone was already at the door. Emma climbed out slowly. She looked different from the terrified girl Margaret had first met. Not healed exactly, but steadier, like she'd found something to hold on to. "Mama M." Emma's voice was shy. "They said I could visit, if that's okay." Margaret was on the porch before she'd consciously decided to move. "Of course it's okay. Come inside. Are you hungry?" Emma's eyes widened. "A little. Then let's fix that." She led the girl into her kitchen, past the letters, past the chaos, to the stove where a pot of soup was always warming. Some things never change, and some things shouldn't. Stone watched from the doorway as Margaret served Emma soup and crackers, listened to the girl talk about the foster home she'd been placed in, promised to visit whenever she could. Bear appeared beside him. "You good, boss?" Stone didn't answer for a moment. He was watching Margaret laugh at something Emma said, watching 2 broken people find comfort in each other, watching history repeat itself in the best possible way. "Yeah," he finally said, "I think I am." "What's next?" Stone looked at his brother. "We rebuild, we expand, we help as many kids as we can." "And Margaret?" Stone smiled. "Margaret's exactly where she's supposed to be, right at the center of everything." Bear clapped him on the shoulder. "You did good, Stone. Coming back here, doing all this." "I didn't do anything, I just showed up." "Sometimes that's enough." Stone thought about that. 21 years ago, Margaret had just shown up at her shed door. Hadn't done anything complicated. Hadn't changed the world with a grand gesture. Just shown up. Just offered soup. And here they all were. Maybe Bear was right. Maybe showing up was everything. The sun set over Cedar Falls, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Margaret stood on her porch, watching the light fade, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, surrounded by exactly the people who matter. Stone joined her. Penny, for your thoughts. I was thinking about Robert and David, wondering what they'd make of all this. What do you think they'd say? Margaret smiled. Robert would say I'm too old for this nonsense. Then he'd roll up his sleeves and start helping anyway. And David? Her smile faltered, just for a moment. David would say I found a new way to collect strays. He always teased me about that. Stone was quiet. Do you think he would have liked me? Margaret turned to look at him, really look at him. This man who had been a boy in her shed, who had survived things that should have destroyed him, who had built an empire of kindness from nothing but pain and determination. He would have loved you, she said firmly, and he would have been proud to call you brother. Stone's eyes glistened. I wish I could have met him. Me too. They stood together in the gathering darkness, watching the last light fade. Inside, Emma was helping Bear dry dishes. Crash was teaching a younger biker to play cards. Someone was laughing. Real laughter, warm and full. The sounds of family. Margaret reached over and took Stone's hand. Thank you, she said. For what? For coming back. For bringing all of this into my life. For showing me that the soup I made 21 years ago actually mattered. Stone squeezed her hand. It always mattered, Mama M. You just couldn't see the ripples. I see them now. Good. He pulled her into a side hug, because they're just getting started. Margaret leaned into him, and for the first time in 21 years, she felt completely, perfectly whole. 3 weeks later, Thanksgiving arrived. Margaret woke at 4 in the morning, her body remembering decades of holiday cooking, even though her mind was still catching up to everything that had changed. She lay in bed for a moment, listening. The house wasn't quiet. Through the walls, she could hear movement, footsteps in the kitchen, voices murmuring, the clatter of pots and pans. She threw on her robe and hurried down the hall. Her kitchen had been transformed into organized chaos. Bear stood at the stove, wrestling with a turkey the size of a small child. Crash, his broken arm now in a proper cast, was peeling potatoes one-handed while a younger biker helped. Emma sat at the table, carefully folding napkins into shapes Margaret didn't recognize. And Stone stood in the middle of it all, directing traffic like a general commanding troops. Mama M, he spotted her in the doorway. You're supposed to be sleeping. I'm supposed to be cooking. Not today. Today, you sit. Lucas, I've cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 50 years. I'm not going to... Sit. His voice was gentle but firm. You've fed enough people for one lifetime. Let us feed you for once. Margaret opened her mouth to argue. Emma looked up from her napkins. Please, Mama M, we've been planning this for days. Something in the girl's eyes made Margaret pause. Hope, nervousness, a desperate need to contribute, to belong, to be part of something good. Margaret recognized that look. She'd seen it in a different pair of blue eyes 21 years ago. Fine, she said, but I'm supervising. Stone grinned. Wouldn't have it any other way. The morning unfolded in a blur of chaos and laughter. Margaret sat at her kitchen table, the same table where she'd served Lucas his first meal, where she'd signed foreclosure papers, where she'd watched her world fall apart and come back together, and watched her family cook. Because that's what they were now. Family. Bear burned the first batch of rolls and cursed so creatively that Emma nearly choked on her orange juice. Crash dropped an entire bag of potatoes and spent 20 minutes chasing them across the floor. A young biker named Spark set off the smoke alarm trying to make gravy. It was chaos. It was perfect. Around 10 o'clock, vehicles started arriving. Henry Dawson came first, carrying a pie his wife had made before she passed 15 years ago. The recipe, anyway. Martha from the diner brought enough side dishes to feed an army. The Nguyen family arrived with spring rolls and a shy smile. One by one, the town came to Margaret's door. People who'd been strangers a month ago. People who'd watched from a distance while she struggled. People who'd finally found the courage to show up when it mattered. By noon, Margaret's yard was full. Bikers and farmers, lawyers and mechanics, old women and young children. A patchwork quilt of humanity that had no business fitting together, but somehow did. Stone found Margaret standing on the porch, watching it all. "You okay?" "I'm overwhelmed." "Good overwhelmed or bad overwhelmed?" Margaret turned to look at him. "I spent 8 years alone, Lucas. After Robert died, after David didn't come home, I thought that was my life now. Empty rooms, silent dinners, waiting to die. And now? Now I can't hear myself think." Stone laughed. "Want me to send some people home?" "Don't you dare." They stood together in comfortable silence. Then Stone reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I have something for you." Margaret eyed it suspiciously. "If that's money—" "It's not money." He handed it to her. "Open it." Margaret's hands trembled as she tore the envelope open. Inside was a photograph. She didn't recognize it at first. A small house with blue shutters, a garden that needed weeding, a shed in the back that looked ready to collapse. Then she saw the woman standing on the porch. Young, maybe 30, brown hair not yet touched by gray. A smile that Margaret hadn't seen in decades. It was her. "Where did you get this?" "I've had it for 21 years. Stone's voice was thick. "The day before Carl took me back, I snuck into your bedroom and found this photo on your dresser. I stole it. I'm sorry." Margaret couldn't breathe. "I've carried it everywhere since then. Through the streets, through rehab, through everything. When I was on that bridge, ready to jump, it was in my pocket." Stone's hand covered hers. "You saved my life 100 times, Mama M. Most of them you didn't even know about." Margaret broke. She collapsed into Stone's arms and sobbed. Huge, racking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her body. 21 years of grief and loneliness and hope and loss and love poured out of her in that moment. Stone held her through all of it. When she finally pulled back, her face was a mess and she didn't care. "Thank you," she whispered, "for showing me this, for coming back, for everything. Thank you for opening that shed door." "I almost didn't. Did you know that?" Stone shook his head. "I was afraid. I saw you in there and my first instinct was to call the police. Let someone else deal with it. Keep myself safe." "What changed your mind?" Margaret looked at the photograph in her hands. "Your eyes. You looked at me like I was the only person in the world who could help you. And I thought, that's too much responsibility for one person. I can't carry that." "But you did." "I did. And I've spent 21 years wondering if it mattered." Stone cupped her face in his hands. "It mattered. Every single day, it mattered. You are the reason I'm alive. You are the reason 847 kids have a future. You are the reason any of this exists." His voice broke. "You are the most important person in my life, and I will spend the rest of my days making sure you know it." Margaret couldn't speak. She just held him. And for the first time since Robert died, she didn't feel alone. The dinner was spectacular. Tables stretched across Margaret's yard, covered in mismatched tablecloths and overflowing with food. More than 100 people sat together, bikers next to bankers, farmers next to lawyers, children running between chairs while adults pretended to scold them. Stone stood at the head table, a glass raised. "Can I have everyone's attention?" The crowd quieted. 21 years ago, I was a homeless kid hiding in a shed, waiting to die. I had no family, no hope, no future. And then a woman I'd never met opened a door and offered me soup. He looked at Margaret. "That woman taught me something I've never forgotten. She taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about choice. It's about showing up when it matters. It's about seeing someone's pain and deciding to carry part of it." The crowd was silent. "Look around this table. Bikers, farmers, business people, Kids who've aged out of foster care. People who had nothing in common until they found each other. Stone's voice strengthened. This is what family looks like. Not perfect, not pretty, but real. And it all started with a bowl of soup. He raised his glass higher. To Mama M, the woman who saw a hungry boy and fed him. The woman who lost everything and still had room in her heart for more. The woman who taught all of us that grace transforms and love remains. 100 voices echoed him. To Mama M. Margaret wiped her eyes. She'd never been comfortable with attention, never wanted praise or recognition. But looking at the faces around her, faces she knew and faces she was just learning, she felt something shift inside her. This was her legacy. Not the house, not the farm, not anything that could be measured or counted. Just this. 100 people gathered in her yard, connected by threads of kindness that stretched across decades. She stood. The crowd quieted again. I don't know what to say, her voice wavered. I'm 73 years old. I've lived through more loss than any person should have to bear. And if you'd asked me a month ago what I had to show for it, I would have said nothing. She looked at Stone. But I would have been wrong, because what I have, what we all have, is each other. And that's not nothing. That's everything. Martha from the diner started clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, the entire yard was on its feet, applauding the small woman who had never wanted to be anyone's hero. Margaret sat down quickly, embarrassed. Stone leaned over. You did good. I hate public speaking. I know. That's why it mattered. The meal continued. As the afternoon wore on, Margaret found herself surrounded by people wanting to share their stories. A young man named Jake told her about aging out of foster care with nothing. No skills, no family, no future. Stone had found him sleeping in an alley and offered him a job at the motorcycle shop. Now Jake managed the parts department and was saving for his own apartment. A woman named Rosa described fleeing an abusive husband with 2 small children. The local chapter had helped her relocate, find work, start over. Her kids were in school now. She was studying to be a nurse. Story after story, life after life, all of them connected to Stone. All of them tracing back, somehow, to a bowl of soup in a cold shed. I didn't do any of this, Margaret told Stone during a quiet moment. You did. I did the work. You planted the seed. That's generous. It's true. Stone's eyes were serious. Mama M, do you know what the kids call you? What do you mean? The ones who come through the program, they all learn your story first, and they have a name for you. Margaret waited. They call you the mother of the table, because everything started with you, at your table, with your soup. Stone's voice dropped. You're not just my Mama M anymore. You're everyone's. Margaret didn't know what to say. She'd spent her life feeling ordinary. A teacher, a wife, a mother who'd lost her son. Nothing special, nothing memorable. But maybe ordinary was exactly what the world needed. Maybe the most extraordinary things came from ordinary people who simply refused to look away. As the sun began to set, Emma appeared at Margaret's side. Mama M, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Emma twisted her hands together nervously. My mom wants to see me, Sarah. She's been calling the foster home every day. Margaret's heart tightened. What do you want? I don't know. She left me with Richard. She knew what he was doing and she didn't stop it. But she's still my mom. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Is it wrong to still love her? Margaret thought about Lucas, about the mother who'd abandoned him, about the complicated, messy, painful reality of family. No, honey, it's not wrong. Love doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't disappear just because someone hurts us. But how do I forgive her? You don't have to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Margaret took Emma's hands. Forgiveness isn't a requirement. It's a gift you give yourself when you're ready. Until then, you just take it one day at a time. Is that what you did? With the people who hurt you? Margaret paused. She thought about Carl Brennan, about Dale, about all the people who'd made Lucas's life and her life harder than it needed to be. I'm still working on it, she admitted. Some days are easier than others, but I've learned that carrying anger is exhausting. It doesn't hurt the people who wronged you. It only hurts you. Emma nodded slowly. Do you think Lucas will ever forgive Sarah? Margaret looked across the yard to where Stone was laughing with Bear about something. I think Lucas is learning that forgiveness and reconciliation are different things. He might forgive her someday, let go of the anger, find peace with the past. But that doesn't mean he has to have a relationship with her. Those are separate choices. Can you teach me that? How to separate them? Margaret squeezed her hands. We'll figure it out together. Emma threw her arms around Margaret's neck. Thank you for everything, for the soup and the room and making me feel like I belong somewhere. You do belong, Emma. You always did. You just hadn't found the right table yet. The girl held on tight, and Margaret held her back. Some patterns repeat for a reason. The evening deepened. Most of the guests had gone home, leaving a core group around a bonfire that someone had built in Margaret's yard. Bikers sprawled in lawn chairs. Emma was asleep on a blanket, her head in Margaret's lap. Stone sat nearby, staring into the flames. Bear approached with his phone. Stone, you need to see this. Stone took the phone. His face went pale. What is it? Margaret asked. It's Sarah. She's in the hospital. Margaret's hands stilled on Emma's hair. What happened? Richard found her, beat her half to death before the neighbors called the cops. Stone's jaw was tight. She's in intensive care. They don't know if she's going to make it. The words hung in the air. Emma stirred but didn't wake. What do you want to do? Bear asked quietly. Stone looked at his half-sister's peaceful face, at Margaret's worried eyes, at the phone in his hand showing news he'd never expected and wasn't sure how to process. I don't know. You don't have to decide right now. Yes, I do. Stone stood abruptly. She's Emma's mother. Whatever she did to me, she's still Emma's mother. If she dies and I didn't go, if I didn't at least try, Emma will never forgive me, and I'll never forgive myself. Margaret gently shifted Emma's head to a pillow and stood. Then go. Mama M, go. Be the man I know you are. The man who shows up even when it's hard, even when it hurts. She touched his face. I'll take care of Emma. She'll be here when you get back. Stone's eyes glistened. I don't know what to say to her. Sarah, I don't know if I can. You don't have to say anything. You just have to be there. Sometimes that's enough. Stone pulled her into a fierce hug. I love you, Mama M. I love you too. Now go and come back. Always. He was gone within minutes, Bear at his side, the roar of their motorcycles fading into the night. Margaret sat back down beside Emma's sleeping form. She didn't know what would happen next, didn't know if Sarah would survive, didn't know if Stone would find the closure he needed or just more pain. But she knew one thing, he would come back, and she would be here, because that's what family does. 3 days later, Stone returned. Margaret was in the kitchen when she heard the motorcycle. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the porch, her heart in her throat. Stone climbed off his bike slowly. He looked exhausted, hollowed out, like he'd aged 10 years in 72 hours. But he was smiling. She's going to make it. Margaret's knees went weak with relief. Thank God. The doctors were able to stop the internal bleeding. She's got a long recovery ahead, but she'll live. Stone climbed the porch steps and sank into a chair. I sat with her for 2 days. She was in and out of consciousness, but she recognized me. What did she say? She said she was sorry, over and over. She kept apologizing for leaving, for believing Carl, for everything. Stone's voice cracked. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to scream at her. Part of me wanted to walk away. But mostly, I just sat there. That was the right thing to do. Was it? I don't feel like I did anything. Margaret sat beside him. Lucas, showing up when it's hard is doing something. Being present when someone is suffering is doing something. You didn't have to forgive her or make speeches or fix anything. You just had to be there. And you were. Stone leaned back and closed his eyes. She asked about Emma. What did you tell her? I told her Emma was safe, that she had a family now, that whatever happened between Sarah and me, Emma would be taken care of. How did she react? She cried, said that was all she wanted, for Emma to be safe. Stone opened his eyes. I think she meant it, for whatever that's worth. It's worth something. Is it, after everything? Margaret took his hand. People are complicated, Lucas. Your mother made terrible choices. She caused immeasurable pain. But that doesn't mean every part of her is evil. It's possible to be a victim and a villain at the same time. It's possible to cause harm and feel genuine remorse. So what do I do with that? Nothing. You don't have to do anything. You just accept that the world is messy and people are broken, and sometimes there aren't any easy answers. She squeezed his hand. You showed up for her when she was dying. That's grace, Lucas, real grace, and it doesn't require you to feel anything specific or forgive anything particular. It just requires you to act with compassion, even when you don't feel it. Stone was quiet for a long moment. How did you get so wise? 73 years of making mistakes, he laughed softly. I missed you. I missed you too. Now come inside. Emma's been asking about you every 5 minutes. The reunion was tearful and chaotic. Emma threw herself at Stone the moment he walked through the door. He caught her easily, holding her while she sobbed and asked questions and demanded answers he didn't have. Margaret watched from the doorway. This was her family now, imperfect, complicated, bound together by pain and loss, and the stubborn choice to keep showing up for each other. It wasn't what she'd expected. It was better. 2 weeks later, Christmas came to the farmhouse. The guest list had grown. Word had spread about Thanksgiving, and people who'd heard the stories wanted to be part of whatever was happening at Margaret Thornton's house. Bikers came from chapters across the country. Kids from Mama M's table, grown now with families of their own, made pilgrimages to meet the woman they'd heard about for years. Reporters lurked at the edges, capturing footage for the documentary that was already in production. Margaret hated the cameras, but she understood their purpose. Every story we tell saves another kid, Stone reminded her when she complained. Every interview, every article, every mention, it reaches someone who needs to hear that help exists. I know. I just wish they'd stop asking me to smile. You have a great smile. I have dentures. Still great. Christmas morning broke cold and bright. Margaret woke to the sound of children, actual children, belonging to the grown kids who'd come back to visit, thundering down her hallway. She lay in bed for a moment, listening. Laughter, squeals, someone shouting about presents. When was the last time her house had held this much joy? She couldn't remember. Maybe never. Stone appeared in her doorway with a cup of coffee. Merry Christmas, Mama M. Merry Christmas, Lucas. The kids are going crazy. Emma's trying to organize them, but I think she's losing. Let them be crazy. This house has been too quiet for too long. Stone sat on the edge of her bed. I have something for you. You've given me enough. One more thing. He handed her an envelope. Open it. Margaret sighed but complied. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Official letterhead. Legal language she had to read twice to understand. Her breath caught. Lucas. The house is yours. Free and clear. Paid off, deed transferred, no more threats from banks or sheriffs or anyone else. Stone's voice was thick. You'll never have to worry about losing it again. Margaret stared at the paper. Her house. The house where she'd raised David. Where she'd loved Robert. where she'd fed a starving boy who came back to save her. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll let us keep coming back. Say this will always be home base for the family we're building. Margaret looked up at him through tears. Where else would I go? Stone grinned. Nowhere. That's the point. She pulled him into a hug, the paper crumpling between them. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for all of it. Thank you for the soup. She laughed through her tears. It was just Campbell's. It was everything. The day unfolded in chaos and joy. Presents were opened. Food was consumed in alarming quantities. Children ran in circles while adults pretended to supervise. At one point, Margaret found herself surrounded by the young people Stone had saved over the years. They sat at her feet like kindergartners at story time, asking questions about the early days, about Lucas, about how it all began. She told them. She told them about the shed, and the soup, and the scared boy who'd been too hungry to trust her and too desperate not to. She told them about the 8 months of joy and the 21 years of grief, and the moment when 97 motorcycles had pulled into her driveway. She told them everything. And when she finished, a young woman named Maria raised her hand. Mama M, I have a question. Go ahead. If you could go back, if you could talk to yourself on that day, before you opened the shed door, what would you tell yourself? Margaret thought about it. She thought about fear and doubt and all the reasons she'd had to walk away. She thought about the life she might have lived if she'd never opened that door. Quieter, maybe, but emptier. So much emptier. I would tell myself to be brave, she finally said. Not because everything would work out, I couldn't know that, but because bravery is the only thing that creates the possibility of something better. Fear keeps you safe, but it also keeps you small, and I would rather fail at something meaningful than succeed at staying comfortable. The young people were silent. Then Maria spoke again. That's what Stone tells us, almost word for word. Margaret smiled. Where do you think he learned it? As evening fell, the crowd thinned. Margaret stood on her porch, watching the last cars disappear down her driveway. Emma sat beside her, wrapped in a blanket, half asleep. Stone joined them, settling into the chair on Margaret's other side. Good day? The best day. Better than Thanksgiving? Different, but yes. Margaret looked out at her yard, still scattered with evidence of celebration. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and discover this was all a dream. It's not a dream. I know, but sometimes the good things feel less real than the bad ones, like we're not allowed to believe in them. Stone reached over and took her hand. Believe in this one. It's real, and it's just the beginning. The beginning of what? Of everything, he gestured broadly. Mama M's table is growing faster than we can manage. The state partnership is bringing in kids we never could have reached before. The documentary is going to spread the story even further. And next year, we're breaking ground on a permanent facility, a real campus where kids can live and learn and heal. Margaret's breath caught. A campus? Rebecca Walsh has been working with architects for months. Dormitories, classrooms, counseling centers, a cafeteria that can seat 200. Stone's voice was thick with emotion. And in the middle of it all, a statue. Of what? Of you, holding a bowl of soup, with a plaque that says, "At this table, nobody goes hungry." Margaret started crying. Lucas, that's too much. It's not enough. He turned to face her fully. Mama M, you changed the world. Maybe not in the way generals or presidents do, but in a way that matters more. You changed it one person at a time, one bowl of soup at a time, one act of kindness at a time. And now that change is multiplying in ways you'll never fully see. Thousands of people are alive because you opened a shed door. Tens of thousands will be alive because of what grows from this. That deserves more than a statue, but it's a start. Margaret couldn't speak. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face, holding the hand of the boy she'd saved and the man he'd become. Emma stirred beside her. Mama M, why are you crying? Margaret wiped her eyes and smiled. Because I'm happy, sweetheart. Sometimes people cry when they're happy. That's weird. Yes, it is, but it's also very human. Emma considered this. I think I'm happy too. I'm glad. This is the best Christmas I've ever had. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The three of them sat together in the gathering darkness. An old woman, a grown man, and a teenage girl. Three broken people who had found each other across decades and circumstances and impossible odds. And as the stars came out overhead, Margaret made a decision. She would write it down. All of it. The story of a bowl of soup and a scared boy, and the family that grew from that single act of kindness. She would write it so that others could read it and remember and believe that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. Because that was the real legacy, not the house or the program or even the lives saved. The story. The idea that grace transforms and love remains. The proof that one person, in one moment, can change everything. Margaret Thornton closed her eyes and let peace wash over her. She had spent 21 years waiting for her boy to come home. He had come home, and he had brought the world with him. This was enough. This was everything. This was grace. And grace, Margaret now understood, was the only thing that truly mattered. Not because it erased the pain, or undid the losses, or made the hard years disappear, but because it transformed them. It took the broken pieces and made something new, something stronger, something beautiful. Stone squeezed her hand one final time. I love you, Mama M. I love you too, Lucas. Always. Always. The word hung in the cold night air, a promise, a prayer, a truth that nothing could take away. Some bonds are forged in fire, some families are built from choice, and some legacies begin with nothing more than a bowl of soup and a woman brave enough to open a door. Margaret Thornton had opened that door, and the world would never be the same.